to be here. So I'm Evan. If you don't know me, I'm a self-regulation coach, which means I help people overcome things like chronic stress, anxiety, trouble sleeping, or just optimize their nervous system, how they feel, energy levels. And to do that, I use natural approaches, let's say, so especially functional breathing, nervous system regulation principles, basically, that are easy to use, that don't require devices, don't require substances, and things like vagus nerve stimulation and some other things. And as I said today, I'm very excited to be here because I'm going to be interviewing my good friend Kristen Vallis. And Kristen is an amazing person. I met her about a month ago. I was exhibiting at a conference here in LA called the Conscious Life Expo. And then I got the chance to talk to her and meet her. And she was telling me her story. And her story is extremely inspiring. She has a beautiful story about how she managed to overcome chronic illnesses. And she's going to talk more about that. But just for you to have an idea, we're going to be focusing on her story. So she's someone that really lived the things that she teaches. So she helps people that are dealing with different kinds of health issues, but not only health issues, like mental, emotional issues as well. And what is great is about her is because, as I said, she really lived the transformation that she's teaching people about. So I want to invite my friend Kristen Vallis right now so she can join us. So Kristen is there we go, Kristen, welcome.
Hi, great to be here.
Amazing,
Thanks
it's
for
my
having me, Evan.
pleasure. Good to see you again. I'm so excited because as I was telling people here, when I heard you telling me about your story, I was so inspired because uh, because the things that you told me that you were doing when you were struggling with your health issues, many of them were exactly the things that I teach my clients and the things that I did myself and that helped me so
Right.
much. They were just like giving different names to that maybe and doing it a little bit different, but I felt like this is nervous system regulation. This is what I teach. This is what I believe that health is about. So that got me really excited to have you. So first, I would like you to introduce yourself. Just share with us whatever you feel it's worth mentioning about you, about who you are, whatever you want to share. And everyone here, please feel free to always make questions as we talk. Please send us your questions, and we'll do our best to answer them. Kristen, have you have the floor.
Thanks, Evan. So I guess I would start with, I used to be a holistic health coach, and I shifted my focus now onto that nervous system regulation and really bringing frequency into alchemy, understanding our frequencies from many different aspects. I use things like numerology. I use different things, understanding about how the brain works and how the hormonal system works in the body, regulating the nervous system through that, and really coming into a deeper awareness of who we are as individuals, what lights us up, what our purpose is, to help bring all of those frequencies into a beautiful balance within, to really bring us into a state of wholeness in every aspect. And so that's kind of what I do now, without going into a lot of detail. But it all started with my holistic health
Amazing.
journey.
Yeah. So you really walk the talk, and everything is based on what you live, right? So could you tell us
Yeah,
a little bit
absolutely.
about what do you mean exactly when you say about harmonizing frequencies? What exactly are those frequencies you're talking about?
Well, at a basic level, it starts with understanding our emotional states. because when we understand our emotional states and that our thoughts and our emotions are driving the chemical reactions in our body, they're really affecting our ability to either be in rest repose or to be in fight flight. And most humans these days spend most of their time in fight flight. But our bodies were not designed for that. Our bodies were only designed to be in that state of fight flight for about 15 minutes or less. It's designed to be a response to imminent danger. And our bodies are now perceiving imminent danger as a bill arriving in the mail that upsets us, or, getting an email from somebody who, triggers you or whatever. These things are putting us in this state of fight flight. So we're spending most of our time in fight flight. If you hear an advertisement on TV and it's designed to produce fear in you to want to buy their product because you feel like you need it to be okay, that's bringing you in a state of fight flight. And what happens in the body is that we are experiencing these hormonal reactions every time our fight flight system is triggered. And when that happens, it does a lot of different things in the brain and in the body, but ultimately it's putting you in a state of decay. And this is why disease comes in, because you're in the state of constant hormonal upheaval in your body that is causing your body not to be able to go in that state of rest repose as often as it needs to in order to repair and regenerate cell growth and really keep the body healthy. It's always in the state of survival. And so there's never that time for the rest and repair that keeps us healthy. And so we go into this state of decay, which is what brings in the
Yeah,
diseases.
absolutely. Perfect. So just want to jump in here. When you were talking about fight flight, when you're talking about rest repose. So these are, just so folks can understand, these are actually modes of the nervous system that are very well understood by science. And we even have specific nerve bundles that are just responsible for either the sympathetic activation, which is the fight flight mode, which is what your nervous system activates when you feel that you are under threat somehow, even if it's not real threat, even if it's perceived threat in any level, that's what gets activated. So these things are it's very easy to understand that in terms of science. As I said, there are specific ganglia, specific nerve bundles that work just to fire this kind of reaction. And there are also other nerve bundles and other pathways that are responsible for triggering parasympathetic responses, which are the rest and digest, right? Eat and breathe. So everything that is related to your body getting healed, repairing, resting, processing, everything that will recover you from any kind of stress you had during a sympathetic activation and then put you to the next level. So it's for people to understand a simple example. If you were working out, if you're lifting weights, so you are stressing the body, neurophysiologically speaking, this is a sympathetic moment. You get very activated. You're doing hard workout, so you stress the body. But then, so if you don't rest after that, right? If you don't have a good night's sleep, now everyone knows that. If you don't have a good night's sleep after your workout, this workout will not really yield results. It's not really going to create, for example, muscle growth, because you need the recovery. The recovery is actually should be much longer than the stress phase so that it can induce adaptation, right? So first you stress, but then the actual growth happens after the stress. The growth doesn't happen while you were pumping. Even though you can feel the pump, this is just momentaneous, right? It's temporary. It's going to go back to the normal size. And then after that, during your recovery, that's when the muscle is actually growing. So that's what Kristen is talking about in different levels. Is that right?
Yep. It is very scientific. Absolutely.
Perfect. So it doesn't matter the language we use, what we're talking about the same thing. So thank you so much. That's a beautiful introduction. Now, why don't you tell us now exactly what you told me? Tell me about your story, and the story now specifically about, what got my interested in made me want to have you here. Just repeat that to the public.
I'm laughing because I'm like, what
Uh,
did I tell him? That was like a week ago.
so just tell me about your story and like the health
Okay.
issues you encountered and how you dealt with them. It's a beautiful story.
Yeah. So yeah, thank you. I had undergone a major trauma, and then within months following that, I started experiencing health issues. And what was happening was I started developing first. I was diagnosed with thoracic outlet syndrome, and that's when your blood is not able to pump properly through your body. And so I was getting numbness and tingling in my hands and arms, and then like blue hands, and then it was happening in my feet and legs and all of this stuff. And then ultimately I was diagnosed with I had 40 different diagnoses and symptoms and conditions like crazy. Like my whole body was in chronic pain on a scale of 1 to 10. I was at rest an 8, and then I would go up to a 10 frequently. So it was really difficult situation. And after several years of this, I wasn't able to work or anything. I was completely debilitated. And I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia, rheumatoid arthritis, multiple sclerosis, lots and lots of different things. I also had PTSD, depression, anxiety, OCD, and chronic migraines. I had TMJ and like so many different things going on with me, right? My whole nervous system was basically shot. I mean, that's really the crux of it. And I did a lot of different things to try and heal. And one of the things the doctors will tell you is that these autoimmune diseases are not curable, which is not true. I know this from my own experience. I know this through my experience with clients and other people in my communities. You can heal all of this stuff if you start to understand what's going on in your body, what's going on with your nervous system, and learning how to regulate that through choosing your emotional states, through doing this work. And I'll get into that in a second, but to just go into a little bit more what's going on with me. So I mean, I was basically in a state of flight fight all the time. I was so stressed out, and the more sick I became, the more stressed out I became, because I was trying to deal with the medical system and legal issues and not having income coming in and all of this stuff. So it was just more and more and more stress. I tried a lot of different things. I know you had asked me about that. I tried a combination of Western and Eastern medical things, holistic practices, such as I did some Western type pain management procedures. I didn't take any meds other than what they gave me in the pain management procedures, because my body did not deal with medications very well. It never has. It's never liked them. So I refused medications, but I did try those things out of desperation because I was just in so much pain all the time. I was mostly using acupuncture, chiropractic. I did try medical marijuana for a while. That helped a little bit with pain management, but it didn't help heal me really. And then I tried PRP. I know we talked about that. Lots and lots of different things. And
Could
then
you tell
I
what
finally
PRP
switched
is?
to that's when they take the blood out of you, and they separate it and get the plasma, and then they re-inject it into a particular area that they feel is the root cause of where the problem is, to stimulate a
It would be
healing
a
response.
platelet-rich
So
plasma therapy. Is that what it stands for? Yes.
yes, that is what it translates to. You're giving all the
Okay.
science for me. Thank you. Because I don't do the science. I know the science, but I don't explain it
You're
very
doing
well.
great.
So I appreciate
All
that.
right.
We work well together. So yeah,
Right. Awesome.
absolutely.
Thank you. So at this point, you were combining some of traditional conventional Western medicine with some, like you said, some acupuncture, some Chinese.
Yeah.
You were especially in the Chinese uh, uh, kind of approaches, special. on these lines?
Not just Chinese. Acupuncture was one, and then I did chiropractic. I did some holistic. I went to a holistic MD who did. Uh, how do I explain them? They're like energetically infused remedies that they give you. And then I, used different supplements and herbs to try and heal. And then I went into the medical medium stuff really heavy. After about 2.5 years, I discovered that. And for those of you who don't know medical medium stuff, he's on Instagram. You can check him out. I basically went whole food, plant-based, really hardcore, and cut out a lot of different things like no fat, no grains, no things like no food additives, no preservatives. It was really, really strict. I did that I'm still kind of doing it, but I don't do it so strict like and I don't follow him anymore. I'm really grateful for what I learned from him, but I also found that there was some food fear wrapped up in some of what he teaches. So, but I did that, and I did experience some healing, and then I plateaued. So then it was like, what's next? That's when I really started getting into the nervous system regulation, right? That's when I found this program that I now teach, because it was so powerful for me, called Mastering the Brain Game, which the whole first half of it is really teaching you how to regulate that nervous system, how to choose your emotional frequency states, and to shift from one emotional state to the other, so that you can shift out of a emotional frequency that will have you stuck in the sympathetic nervous system, where you're in that fight flight, shifting it over to the parasympathetic, where you go into the
And
rest
how did
repose.
you start understanding or predicting that there could be something there for you?
I've always been very intuitive. So I've let my intuition guide me to different things. And I've been very spiritual as well. And so I actually prayed to be led to the right information several times during my journey, and that would bring me to the next step. And so this was just the natural progression of that. So I had been following the creator of the Brain Game on social media for several years before I ended up asking her to be my coach. And even when she became my coach, she didn't tell me that she was going to be walking me through this program until I showed up for the first coaching session, and she's like, here's what we're going to do. So I didn't even know I was signing up for this program, but it turned out to be like the best thing that could have ever happened to me. So,
Oh,
because I've really started, it's a 10-week program, and I walked through it, and I basically, before I was even done with it, I was in week 8. I went in not believing that I could even be healthy enough to work yet. And by week 8, I was starting my own business. So it was
wow.
huge, huge transformation, because I was able to come out of that fight flight. And once you're out of that fight flight, what happens in the brain when you're in it all the time is that your reptilian brain, which is at the base of your skull, is what is active. And it basically cuts off access to the rest of your brain, where your imagination is, where your creativity is, where your ability to tap into possibilities is. So you think very black and white when you're in that state of fight flight, and you can't see what else is available to you, what other options are available to you. So it keeps you cut off. It keeps you cut off from your intuition. Like all of these things, that you have this wonderful brain that can do all of these things for you. But when you're stuck in fight flight, you can't access them very easily, or sometimes at all, depending on the person and how deep you're in it. So that was really what helped start pulling me out, is as I started calming my nervous system first through the diet, and then came into an ability to access that part of my brain a little bit better, I was able to follow my intuition more and find
And
even more
how could
possibilities.
diet somehow influence your nervous system. How could that be even possible?
Yeah, so that's a really great question. When you, this is my personal experience, and I have no judgment with, and I'm prefacing this for a reason, I have no judgment of anyone who eats animal products, because I am not like the vegan who will go up on the mountaintop and say, stop eating animals. But my experience with it is when I stopped putting in more things in my body that were already in a state of fight flight when they were killed, because animals are instinctual. They know they're about to be killed. I don't care how humanely you do it, they know. So their bodies are releasing all those hormones. You eat the animal, you're putting those hormones into your body. So you're adding to an already heightened state of fight flight when you do that. And when I stopped eating animals and animal products, and not only that, but also the food additives and preservatives. This is also a huge thing, because the food additives and preservatives really mess with your nervous system. They really mess it up because they're designed to be addictive. So they mess with your nervous system. And so I think by cutting out those two key components, that really started calming down my nervous system. There's also just by cleaning up like the lessening the chemicals in my environment and that I was putting in my body also helped enable my third eye to open up more. You know, it decalcifies the third eye when you stop drinking water with fluoride in it and stop, you know, taking all these other chemicals into your body. So there were a lot of factors in that cleaning up the diet really helped open up a lot of different things in my body, a lot of different senses, and calm down that nervous system.
So actually, we know now very well that what happens in the gut is actually even more connected to the nervous system than we used to imagine, right? And then there's any exciting
Absolutely.
talking about the vagus nerve, which is something that I like telling my clients about. And this vagus nerve is a very clear connection between the gut and the brain. Not only those things, but it's something that directly connects both. And that's why we usually believe that what happens in the gut happens also in the nervous system somehow, and the other way around. So if you are, this will, of course, will depend on each person, but if you're eating foods that are causing inflammation or that your gut is not being able to handle well, so it's different for each person. For you also, you mentioned meat. So like in my case, for example, my body deals very well with meat, and but doesn't deal very well with other things that we know is inflammatory for everyone, and it's what happens there, it will affect your brain as well, definitely, for sure. And
and the other thing I wanted to mention is that adding more fruit in really helps, because that cools down the brain. It cools down the nervous system. The brain is actually made of glucose, not protein, as we're so programmed to believe. So when you eat more fruit, it helps cool down that brain and cool down the nervous system, which also helps bring the body into a state of rest.
Just to correct a little bit, so actually, like the brain is made of several different things, especially would be fat and protein, but it runs on glucose. So maybe that's what it is. So the main nutrient for the brain is going to be glucose, which can come from things that you eat that are just glucose. It can come from carbohydrates that gets broken down. It can come from protein. Protein can turn into glucose. It can come from fat. But yes, it runs on glucose. And actually, if you, fruit will give you actually fructose. It has some glucose, but I see that from a Chinese medicine perspective, which I think makes total sense. It has this cooling effect to the brain. I wouldn't know exactly the science behind that, but it makes, and you can feel that.
It does, and it also helps repair neural pathways too. So.
And it's something you can feel, right? Like if you're connected, you can feel that.
You can, if you start adding more fruit in, you will feel that. You will feel that cooling down.
Amazing.
Absolutely.
And then what else? So you mentioned diet. What were the next steps during this program? Because you were mentioning this program. It was called the Brain Master, Mastering the Brain.
Mastering the Brain Game.
So So
Yeah.
you said that in 8 weeks you felt a lot of difference. So what were the other things that you changed during this period?
Well, the program helps you to understand initially what's going on in the brain and how to work with your emotions, how to identify your emotions, and how to shift those emotional states into a state that you want to experience versus what you don't without bypassing
Tell
your
tell
emotions.
tell me more about
That's
that
really
because this is
key.
a
Right.
good point
So
to talk about.
so we teach you how to acknowledge and feel the emotion you're experiencing before you shift into a new emotional state. So that keeps you from that old habit that many of us have of just bypassing the emotion when we want to, oh, I'm just going to think positive, or I'm just going to, I'm not going to acknowledge the fact that I'm angry or sad or, scared or whatever it is. I'm just going to, try and focus on what I want to experience. Well, that doesn't work because it's a band-aid and you're still having those emotional responses in your body, even if you're
Right.
pretending that you're not. So we actually teach you how to feel into these emotional states, identify them, acknowledge them, accept them, forgive yourself for experiencing them, because many people feel that it's not okay to have these negative emotions, right? There's no good emotion or bad emotion, but there are certain emotions that will have you in a state of fight flight versus in a state of rest repose. So we look at it from a more scientific perspective in that way of what's going on with the frequencies of what we're experiencing. And then there's a tool that we like to use called the feeling wheel. It was designed by Gloria Wilcox, and she was a child psychologist, I believe. She used this to help the children identify their emotions and name them and do different things. But what we discovered is that the frequencies, it's in a circle, and they're cut up into pie pieces. And if you look at the emotions on opposite sides of those pie pieces from one another, they're actually line up in a frequency state that's very similar to one another. So we've identified certain emotions that, for instance, if you're angry, it's easier to shift over to the empowered piece of the pie, which is across from that, than it would be to shift over into, say, peace. Because that's a different pie
Mhm.
piece that's off to the side that isn't across from angry.
So
So we
what would be in this
identified
case,
which
for,
emotions it's
for
easier to
example,
shift
from
from one
anger,
to the
what would be
other.
the closest positive emotion? Oh, yeah.
Powerful.
And this is amazing because it's
Yeah.
also very it 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 makes total sense if we think of, for example, the polyvagal theory, which was, and you see this again, how we can combine everything, the more energetic level, scientific level. So the polyvagal theory developed
Yeah.
by a psychiatrist called Dr. Stephen Porges, is in, I think it's North Carolina University, I think, and he studied the nervous system, and some of the things that the polyvagal theory teaches, actually some other people that added to the theory, but working closely to Dr. Stevens, it was exactly that, like understanding when you are either in like fight, flight, or shutdown mode, and then gradually come back to parasympathetic, to a more a peaceful state, restful state, but then knowing what are the easiest steps to go. So again, as I said, if you are like shut down, you were so overwhelmed with stress that you were like shut down. You know, shut down is like when you are depressed because you were in chronic stress for a long time, and then you were depressed. You don't have enough energy. You don't even have emotions. So if you just try to, okay, I will do a meditation to feel peaceful, there's a path to get there. So first you need to recover the vibration in your nervous system. First you need to go a little bit to sympathetic to activate this energy, and then it could be through, even with anger first, because you were far from that. Even you were like in shutdown. So first you feel the anger. After you feel the anger, then you try to find a similar energy, but or a similar feeling, but that is connected to anger, power, but then in a more positive way. It could be like something that makes you feel empowered. And then after that, you can start shift into a more peaceful state. So I love that. It makes total sense. It's missing
Yeah,
piece in
it's
my
all about
approaches.
the frequency of the emotions. Yeah, yeah. And it can be measured scientifically. Like each of these emotional states can be measured scientifically. And I always forget the guy's name, the scientist that did the studies with the water and labeling them with different
Masato approach,
emotions.
yeah, Masato, the
And
Japanese.
yes, exactly. And you know how it affected the molecular structure of the water. That's exactly what's happening in your body when, you know, our bodies are a large part water. And so when you think about that, and that frequency state is so important to manage and to take responsibility for managing. You know, we often feel like we're at the whim of our emotions. We just feel this way. Oh, I feel like shit today. I'm just gonna have a shitty day. And it's like, well, actually, you have a choice. At any moment, you can choose to shift that frequency into something you would enjoy more. Like, do I want to feel joy today? Do I want to feel sexy? Do I want to feel peaceful? What do you want to feel? You always have a choice to choose to shift into a different emotional state, but you need to learn the tools of how to do that because we weren't taught this in
So
school.
we were talking about a map of emotions and how they connect to each other and how you can jump from one to the other without, as I said, without just ignoring, neglecting, or pretending that you're not feeling the bad ones, without bypassing, but actually kind of integrating,
Right.
accepting, and then you are ready to choose what you want. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's also being mindful that when we're in an emotional state that we're not enjoying, that emotion will gain momentum after 15 seconds. So if we don't interrupt that emotion in the earlier stages of feeling it, we will build up a momentum of it, and it's a little bit harder to shift. It's not impossible. You can always shift your emotions, but the longer you choose to stay in an emotional state, the longer it may take you to shift out of it. And the other thing about that is if we observe our emotion that we're experiencing, whether we are enjoying that emotion or not, it will last for 15 minutes on its own if we don't choose to engage with it. Because we're not our emotions. We can sit and observe our emotional state without actually being in it. However, if we just were to observe it and say, okay, I'm angry right now. I see you anger. I feel you anger. And I know I'm not the anger, but I'm observing it, and you just allow it to be, it would dissipate on its own after 15 minutes. But if you choose to go, I'm angry, and I'm going to talk about how angry I am, and I'm going to yell, and I'm going to scream, and I'm going to hit things, and whatever you do to perpetuate that anger, you're going to stay in that feedback loop of anger until you choose to
Mm-hmm.
consciously interrupt it.
And what about, because again, we might be in different stages and different points of this entanglement with the emotions. So do you feel that it's, because what I feel is that it's a matter of finding what the moment requires so that you can go and get to the step where you choose the emotions to have. So would you say that sometimes it could be the best thing to do to just punch something without hurting anyone, like, punch a pillow or something, so that you can bring that anger here, as long as you are then ready to do something to let go. So not staying there, not getting stuck there, but use there as a bridge to then go and do what you said.
I mean, what you're talking about is channeling the frequency into something. So you can always channel anger is a big one. That's a really good example because it's that Mars energy, it's that war energy, right? And so you can always channel that energy into passion instead of anger. There's a difference between the two. So you're talking about physically moving that energy out of your body through an action. But what if instead of punching a pillow and staying in the angry state, you take that action to I don't know, you go, you do some physical exercise, you do something that's positive for your body, or you create something like, I don't know what you know, whatever you love to do. Maybe you dance, maybe you create a delicious meal, maybe you create a new program to move out in the world, but you channel that energy into passion. So you're shifting the vibrational frequency of it. But it's easy to shift that vibrational frequency from anger to passion. And you'll notice this in people in relationships that have this Mars connection too. They'll have very passionate sex, very, very passionate makeup sex. They channel that energy into that sexual energy, which you can also do. And they might also have fierce arguments because they get caught up in the energy and the different frequencies of it. So understanding that you can always choose how to channel the energies that you're experiencing, the emotional frequencies that you're experiencing. We have that ability, we have that power, but we just need to learn how to do it and practice doing it so we get good at it.
And what if so you gave some ideas, for example, when dealing with anger, so you can channel into something creative, into something that moves your body, but it's more positive. What if like the anger or the mental state that the person is in is so negative that if they even think of doing something positive, something good for their body, they just like, no way, just wanted, no way I'm gonna do something, no way I'm gonna dance. I hate to dance, no way I'm gonna go and run. I hate it.
Yes.
I'd rather die. So what about that? What in this case? Any other bridge that they can use to get there?
Yes. We have a tool for
Yeah.
that too. So that's where we pull in the emotional scale. And if any of you have followed Abraham Hicks, she talks about the emotional scale too, where you, instead of trying to shift from one frequency to the other and make that big jump, you move yourself slowly up the emotional scale, which is another tool for mapping out emotional states in terms of their frequency, the lower vibrational frequencies on up to the higher vibrational frequencies, which is another way of saying really bad fight flight situation and really good rest repose, right? So you're moving yourself up step by step. So instead of moving from anger to empowerment, you would move from anger to, I forget what's next, like frustrated. And then you'd move up from frustrated to, I don't know what's next after that. I don't have them memorized, but you move up step by step. So you're staying in those lower vibrational frequencies, but you're just upping it a notch each time you move up so that you go slowly up. Yeah, because if you're really down there and you're really in it, it can be really challenging. Like I said, if you've gained a lot of momentum, it's going to be a little trickier to shift right across that feeling wheel, right? So you would want to use the emotional scale in that particular situation so that you can just inch your way up. It's a little bit easier when you're that much in it. And I have definitely been in it like that. And I know that you're right. Like you get to this point where you're like, I'm not going to freaking, do this thing. I don't, the resistance comes in, right? Big time. The resistance. You just want to stay in your anger. You want to stay in that experience. And that's because that part of your brain is only seeing black and white because you're cut off from all the possibilities. So that's when you want to inch up.
I think we're really onto something here because I think this idea of having a map, it is so freaking important because as you said, when you are in fight or flight, when you are in the sympathetic, you are overly sympathetic activation, and you are under overly sympathetic states, then you are really stuck in the reptilian brain. You're if you measure the activity in your amygdala and your brainstem, it's like to the root, and then your prefrontal cortex is like very little blood is here, which makes total sense because evolutionarily speaking, we were designed to, number one, stay alive. That's the number one, right? The body's number one. The body's number one function is to keep you alive. So if there's any kind of threat, or if you are in any situation that you feel like, it's like you are under threat, it's like, okay, now we need to survive. It's not the right time to think. If we spend energy thinking, we're going to die because that's what happened in the past.
Yes.
If you were overthinking when you were being chased by a tiger, chased by a tiger, then it would die. So you need to be just acting and being
Yeah.
emotional, like reptilian. So my point is, like, when you are under these influences of these emotions, you were not able to, okay, let me make a plan right now. What am I going to do? Okay, let me think. Maybe I could,
Yeah, that
frustration,
isn't
maybe
happening.
now frustration. You don't have time for that. So you need to understand that before and be ready for when you are
Mhm.
in that situation so you know what to do. And then having a map sounds like an amazing idea. It's like, okay, what's that anger? What's next to the map? What's the closest one? Quick, frustration. Okay, so you try to tuning to the frustration energy, like the frustration frequency, and then it's right.
Oh, oh yeah, we give you visuals to you can put them on your phone screensaver so that you can just have it ready to go, right? Yeah,
Amazing.
because exactly when you're in that state, you can't
I
access that
love that. Yeah,
information.
actually, I had never thought
Yeah.
about that, like about having a map, like a very clear map of how to move and just change emotions. That's very cool. There was something I was gonna mention. Um, Let me see if I don't lose the thread. Yeah, there are a couple of things. So one is because you said that if you if you linger for too long there in one same emotion, then it's going to be more difficult to switch to a different one, right? Or get stuck there too much.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and, and that is interesting. So just again, to make this bridge with the biological processes, one thing that I teach is that if you, and then it could be along like many years or days or months, doesn't matter, but if you get stuck in sympathetic activation for a long time, so what happens is that your vagus nerve, which is the most important nerve for parasympathetic responses, so for relaxation responses. So again, if you are under fight or flight, if you are under stress for too long, then what happens to your vagus nerve, which controls relaxation, digestion, these kinds of functions, it will actually lose tone. So it will start losing the ability to fire, literally, and that can be measured. For example, if you use HRV monitors, heart rate variability. So you see that when people are under
Hmm.
chronic stress, the heart rate variability goes down, and that means that your vagus nerve is not. That means several different things, but in terms of the vagus nerve, means that it's losing its ability to fire. And that could be maybe just because it was not being used as much, and then really, literally, it starts becoming weaker.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then
Atrophied.
that's why I'm a huge advocate for combining things like emotional, spiritual practices, mental practices with something that involves the body, because it will make things much easier if you understand, for example, how to tone your vagus nerve, because like it lost the tone. And like, of course, your mind can change your body, but it might take more time because, like, the vagus nerve doesn't have the tone. So what are you going to do about that? Or you have a lot of toxicity in your brain, you have a lot of inflammation in your brain because you are stuck in sympathetic. Sympathetic is a pro-inflammatory state. So you have a lot of information in your brain. It's going to be really hard for you to calm down or to have clarity. So that's why these approaches are integrated. You can use them very well together. Right?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And even in the brain game, like what I'm sharing with you right now is only the first few weeks. There's so much more that goes into that, and self-care is a big part of that too. And really starting to understand the importance of bringing all of those pieces in, mind, body, spirit, in order to have that balance, have the complete picture, because just having one piece of it isn't going to get you the results that you want. I didn't cure my health issues by just doing one piece, and you do need to bring in all of those things. And the other thing I wanted to mention too, which I think you kind of touched on, but we didn't really clarify, was if you're in a state of anger, like trying to go and sit and meditate to get out of it is just cruel and unusual punishment. It is so
Exactly.
cruel to try and do that to yourself. If you are in that state, you must shift your emotional state first, and then you can do things like yoga or meditation or mindfulness practices. But if you try and go from anger into a mindfulness practice, it's just cruel. because your brain will be spinning, you'll be, and then you'll be beating yourself up because why can't I calm down? And it just
Yeah, exactly.
perpetuates
It's
the
totally
cycle.
connected to what you said before about you then wanting to punish you because you were feeling that. And they were like, oh, said,
Yeah.
people like, like a meditator teacher told me that I should be sitting and I should have my mind quiet. And I'm feeling all these emotions. So I must be doing something wrong, right? And then they start feeling bad
Yeah.
about that. And then they will not
Yeah.
comply.
Yeah.
Like, there's no way they're going to comply. There's no way and they will feel that they can't meditate, for example. But actually, they didn't have the right approach.
Yes.
They didn't address the emotional charge that is like running through their body and just making it completely impossible for them to calm their mind. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. And what you're really touching on is following the cycle of transformation. So you want to make a huge change in your life. This is where we bring in universal laws into the picture. And when I say that, most people think of the law of attraction, but there are hundreds of universal laws that govern our experience here on this planet, including gravity, including polarity, like ones that you've heard of and you don't associate that with being a universal law, but they are. And there's a universal law of divine timing. And what you're talking about is walking through that cycle of divine timing in a particular order in order to experience true transformation. And this really is the key to transforming your health issues and transforming your financial issues and transforming your relationship issues, is walking through it in a specific order, which is what we do and teach in the brain game. So you're actually experiencing walking through that cycle in a particular order. So you're not trying to meditate before you've learned about your brain and your nervous system functions and your emotional states. We take you through a very specific order so that you can. And the other part and the other piece of this that we haven't touched on is really coming into an understanding of who you are, what you want, and why you want it. Because when you start focusing on, like I was talking about, channeling that energy into what you want to create, when you start focusing on what you want to create and taking your focus in this case off of the pain, off of the chronic illness, off of what you're feeling in your body, the symptoms, it's not about ignoring the symptoms. Again, it works the same way with the feelings. We acknowledge what's going on. We, nurture the body with what it needs, but we don't try and control it. You come into a state of acceptance of it, and you take your focus off of that and onto what's really important to you, what you want to create. And the more that you work through all of the emotional stuff, the easier this becomes, because you're doing this in a very specific order. So we don't jump to, oh, just forget about the fact that you have all these chronic health issues and just start, creating this life that you want. You can't do that. It's out of order, right? So you go in a very specific order, but by the end of that 10 weeks, we've walked you through that whole system. So that's why when I reached week 8, I was able to start a business, and I never even thought I was capable of holding down a job at that point because of my physical limitations. So that's why it's so powerful, because we're working with the universal laws, working with the frequency flow of the universe, the way it's laid out for us, instead of against it, instead of jumbling up the order.
Makes total sense. So
So,
what you're calling divine timing is
yeah.
this this awareness of what the next steps are and what is the correct order to get to where you want, right?
Yeah, it is the natural cycle of transformation. So every cell in your body goes through a cycle of divine timing, from its inception through its development and all the way through into transformation into whatever that becomes, whether it becomes a rejuvenated version of itself or whether it is going into entropy and it is dying out and it's past its time. Everything in nature goes through this cycle of divine timing. And as human beings in our lifetime, we go through this cycle of divine timing from birth through death, right? It's just the natural order of things. And when we really muck it up is when we try and do things in orders that aren't, we only do pieces of it, but we skip pieces. You can't do that if you want true transformation that's lasting. You must go through each stage of divine timing, and it has, you move through awareness, then acceptance, then self-responsibility, then activation, momentum, and transformation. So that's the cycle that we go through. And when you understand it, and when you understand how to walk through it, and you have the tools to do that, you can create anything you want. And that's how you can create health in your body. That's how you can transform your relationships or your finances or whatever you want.
And so basically what you're saying is that after learning how to deal with these emotions and move to emotions that you prefer, then that's when you most saw that your symptoms started to reduce. And just for folks who were not here in the beginning of the talk, we're not talking about just feeling unwell. So actually, Kristen was struggling with severe chronic illnesses, including fibromyalgia, multiple sclerosis, rheumatoid arthritis, chronic fatigue, and then it was all at once. And so she's saying that she dealt with this kind of health condition, and just learning how to deal with her emotion was one of the best things that directly affected the disease, not only how you felt mentally, but like the symptoms themselves, right? The disease were improving. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, all my symptoms started reversing and going away. They just started dissipating. And, now I don't even identify with being sick. So, these illnesses that I got this life sentence to have, I don't even consider myself, I don't describe myself as sick at all or having any sort of illness. Now, if I went to a medical doctor, they might still insist that I have it and I'm just in remission or something. But you can call it whatever you want. I don't care, but it's not with me anymore. I'm not experiencing those symptoms. I'm not having those struggles. I'm not disabled and debilitated. I'm able to be fully functioning human being, and I feel good. I feel vital. I feel healthy. So, yeah.
You have some of your followers here also sharing some experiences they had with the brain game and everything. So thanks for sharing with us. And you have tender loving crystals and jams, and Anna's right. Enter, please, Anna. So, and they're sharing some of her experiences. That's cool. Now, so some of some of the conditions you were dealing with, they were autoimmune, right? Multiple sclerosis, rheumatoid arthritis. These are all autoimmune conditions, right? So if we think, because I always like reminding people that there's always a reason for what the nervous system decides to do, right? It's not just random. And so we're talking about autoimmune disease. We're talking about the body for some reason attacking itself, right? So the immune system, the immune cell system, they are creating these inflammatory chemicals that will fight our own cells instead of fighting a pathogen or a cancer cell, something that is really or a toxin. So did you, because you were connected to your body, were connected to your intuition, you were doing your job when it comes to healing yourself. So did you have any understanding? So again, this is your true understanding, because remember, if you have a body, you are entitled to talk about your body. You don't need to be a doctor to, like, kind of just say what is happening to your body. Because if you connect to it, you cannot describe the process, the names of the molecules, but you can understand why your nervous system, which is the boss of your body, decided to do whatever it's doing, right? So my question is, did you have any feeling of, because this is something that makes me curious, of why, if there was a meaning behind this situation in which your body was attacking itself? Did you have any insights about that, or what it means, what is behind that?
Well, I did have a a realization or an intuitive understanding that that it was about it was a self-love issue for me. So that oh, the idea that your body is attacking itself. The first thing when I heard that, when I heard that that's what autoimmune disease was, I was like, oh, well, that makes sense, because I've been on this discovery of how little I loved myself at the time, and so it makes sense that my body would turn on me too, right? I don't believe your body attacks yourself anymore. I don't believe that, but I do believe that our body is a wonderful indicator and messenger of and mirror of what's going on internally, emotionally, spiritually, mentally, right? So, these symptoms manifest through the body, and they're really just wake-up calls. It's your body trying to tell you that you're out of alignment with your spiritual truth that you are love, that you are a spiritual being, that you are beautiful in every way. And so when we have these experiences through the body, it's the body trying to tell you that you're somehow out of alignment with that, and trying to wake you up to that. And, my symptoms didn't all of a sudden come on out of nowhere. They were, there were minor things that you just tend to ignore over the years. And then all of a sudden you have a big trauma or a trigger happen, and boom, everything, blows up into this massive illness. Is how it happened for me. And I know it happened for so many others that experience things like that. And, your body's always trying to communicate with you. So the more you can create that relationship with your body as that conduit for bringing you messages, bringing you information about where you're out of alignment with who you really are. I worked so many years in so many different jobs that were so out of alignment with who I was, that weren't really using my gifts and talents, or weren't lighting me up, weren't fulfilling me, right? And that was one of the biggest messages that my body was trying to tell me, is like, what are you doing? Like, come on. Like, you need to start stepping into what you came here to do as a soul, right? Your divine purpose. And until I started doing that, which is what the brain game helped lead me into, was discovery of what that was for me through my own understanding, and starting to take actions towards it. That's when my body state began to shift, because whenever you're getting a message, whether it's through your body, through nature, through other people mirroring things to you, you are you're getting those messages for a reason. And when you get the message, when you actually open yourself up to hear it and get curious, what am I being told here? And you get it, it goes away, because you don't need it anymore. You got the message.
If you really got the message, right?
Yeah, if you really got it. And if you didn't, it will keep coming in one way or another.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think one of the biggest takeaways is just understanding that symptoms in health issues are not random. They are telling you something. And then it's
Yeah.
all about learning the language of your nervous system, learning the language of your body, learning to listen, learning to, like, okay, what is it that I'm not seeing that I'm supposed to do? Or what is it that I'm not seeing that I'm not accepting? Or that I'm not doing that it was supposed to be my next step, because that's what all my being wants me, like the direction that all of me wants to go, but for some reason my mind is kind of getting stuck, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And it's beautifully said how you put that. I love that. And, I have really enjoyed this conversation so much today. Like, we've just gone into we could talk for hours about this stuff, right?
Yeah.
I can tell, like, and we probably will offline. Maybe we'll do another live, because this has been amazing. And I hope that, your audience has gained some wisdom through this. If you guys are interested in the brain game, follow me, reach out to me, send me a DM, and we can talk about it. I
Just
can
say
get you
again
more
what
information.
your profile, Instagram profile.
It's at Kristen Vallis, which is Kristen, Valus as in Sam. And it's lit up right now. So if you click it now, you can get there. And if you're not already following Evan, make sure you follow him because he's got a lot of wisdom to share as well, as you can tell from this conversation. So, yeah, it's been amazing.
Yeah,
And I
we
can't
need
wait
to
for
have
our
another
next
one. We also need
conversation.
to touch on the other things you did as well, right? That helped you in this pattern. All right, we'll be waiting.
Yes,
Cool.
so much
Yeah,
information we
so
can
I'll be
share.
also looking forward for part two, and I hope everyone has enjoyed. I did, and yeah, let's let's keep talking about that, and let's uh, arrange this next one.
Sounds
Kristen, thank you
wonderful.
so
Have a
much. Have
great
a
day,
great day,
everyone.
everyone. Thank you. Take care. Appreciate it.
Bye bye.